Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tarot with an Attitude and the Karmic Path. As we do, sorry, I always get all this stuff mixed up,
We
but
got too many things.
crossing realms together. And it was funny. I was watching you right before the camera went live. You're like,
I know. I got this
and I'm
little
like,
weird
I can't
bang
do
thing
that.
going on. I know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it is what it
I
is.
can't do that. I can't do, it'll be like, and
The
it's just,
reality is I have a slight cold, and I when I lay down, I have to have a blackout, right? So I'm like this, and it ruined it. So whatever. Now y'all know my secret.
there you go. There you go. So
Mhm.
what's happening with you, ma'am?
Man, it's all good stuff going on. Like I said, I got a slight cold, and so I've been moving kind of slow. And I don't know if anybody else is like feeling this, like the energy is kind of like just drudging along. Kind of like I feel like I'm walking through muck, but it's all good stuff. No major complaints. Just I'm ready for summer. I'm ready for spring. Tired of the clouds. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's exactly where I'm at. Snow's all melted. It was 50 something degrees today. It was good to get out in my backyard, fill up my deer feeder, things like that. And the
Okay.
squirrels are just going crazy.
Your deer feeders use your deer feeder because mine don't. They're like above it.
They do. And so it's one of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it one of those little snout
But
ones?
I had to spread. It's like I had to go. It's over here. So I mixed sweet feed with some cracked corn, and then I threw it kind of on the ground where they had to like follow it because I kind of know their trail. And then they came up. I saw one using it the other day.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to make the trail longer.
Yeah, that's it. And make it thick. It's just feed, whether they're eating it over there or they're eating it over here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But you were talking about energy, and it's funny that today, in working with a couple of different people, the whole energy thing came up. And so you and I talked very briefly, and the subject of vampires, is something you and I have always kind of talked about. And it's one of those things, though. Everybody knows about energy vampires, okay? But I thought it might do us some good if we talk about vampires on a whole scale. Yes, the energy vampires are out there. We know them, but and they suck us in. They don't feel it coming on, okay?
Right.
But there are other kind of vampires that are there that will actually steal your life force. So, and when I hit you with a text, what do you think about vampires? You were like, oh yeah, I'm in. Okay.
Yep.
Of course, there's not many topics like this that you and I won't talk about where both of us aren't like, oh yeah, I'm in.
Let's go for it.
So let's start with where are you at on the whole topic of vampires as a whole? And then we'll move into it there because I know you and I are both going to get into y'all hang tight.
Yeah,
we got some stories for you.
People, right? More than just people. Yeah. So for me, a vampire is something that sucks, right? When we think about, the proverbial Dracula thing is, got the fangs and he's sucking the blood out of you. It's something, and the blood is the metaphor for energy. So sucking the life force out of you. So we are all light beings, meaning we have prana or energy or chi, whatever you want to call it, that we are connected to the God source divine through literally the mouth or the soul star chakra, the crown chakra.
Right.
But also we have so many other energetic points within us. So when I talk about when I do talk about this, there's many types of hauntings, and a haunting is simply an energetic hijacking or even betrayal. So when we think of a haunting, yes, right, they sure are, Alyssa. Fleas, the ticks, and mosquitoes are vampires too.
Absolutely.
We often think of like the dead people haunting the living, right? Ghost stories. But the living can haunt the dead, and this is especially true maybe when a child dies, right? The living people say, oh, this is not the natural order thing. They hang on to their child's soul energy and they don't let them cross over. They're not doing it to be mean or vicious, but it just happens. But there's also the fact that there's an unseen energetic force that impacts all of us, and it can be a light source or a dark source. The light side is not going to mitigate our free will. The light side will not take our energies. The dark side, when they left the light of God, they're like, snap, we need an energy source. Hey, look at these humans. And so these dark entities prey upon us. They are nothing more than just parasites, though. So we have to take the fear away of what they are, because they love fear-based energy. Fear in humans gives us an adrenaline boost, okay? And that adrenaline is a tasty resource for them. So just know that they're parasites, and we have the ability to say no. We also have the responsibility to not allow this to happen. Here's the caveat. How do we know if it's happening or not, right? I can't see anything in this other realm. How do I know? So we got to figure out what is impacting us and why. So if you're feeling tired and drained, why is that? Right? And that's what we have to investigate. What if you go to the store and you run into, your old friend that you haven't seen in years, and you go, oh, hi, how are you? You give each other a big hug, and you go away and you're left feeling exhilarated or full of energy, right? And you both are feeling that way. It's your energetic signatures are 1 + 1 is 4.
Right.
This is a good thing. Now, what happens if you run into this old friend and after you leave, it's like, oh dear God, I need a nap, right? We've all had that happen. That's an energy vampire. That's a human energy vampire. And what if we kind of talk about the human energy vampires and then we go into the other stuff, the paranormal ones?
Absolutely. And one of the things we have to realize, we do have a responsibility to ourselves and to other people that are close to us when we're around an energy vampire. Some of that can come off on us. And now, a lot of people it's very easy to say energy vampire. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I'm going to put this kind of like the old myth legend goes. Now they've, over the years, the legend, they've played with it in Hollywood and things like that. Okay. Nobody's bright and shiny and crystally. Okay. Love the movies, but they're not, they're not walking around out in the, look at me, it's one of those things. And they're not opting to feed on deer, their food source is their food source.
Yeah.
One of those things you have to realize is whenever we come in touch with them, when your phone rings and you look at that phone, or you're immediately before you even look at it, get that, I know who it is and I don't want to answer it. Yeah. There comes a point where you have the responsibility to start putting those people out of your life, or not bringing them so close. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we don't have to be cruel about it.
No, we don't.
Sometimes we have to be cruel about it. Okay. Some people just don't get the memo. However, when you get that text message or something and you hold your breath for a brief moment in time, that's something, right?
Right.
And there are people out there, and Cynthia brings up a really good point about, she thinks her mom might be an energy vampire. There are people out there that cannot self-sustain energetically. They have to rely on other people to gain their energy. A lot of performers and such are out there as well. They need the energy of the audience to sustain themselves. When that happens, we're missing the God source connection.
Correct.
It's been cut off or severed or even partially, disconnected. And that means that's something that I have to work on. Right? Now, the best energy vampires are the narcissists.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Some of this thing and what we have to realize is, yes, they are, my brain just went bloop. It's one of those things where these people, and I think you said it best with lacking a God connection. All right. You know how when I'm always talking to people, and especially these young girls, about does he love me or whatnot, and I say, do you love yourself first? And a lot of these people don't know how to function because they have zero self-esteem. Okay. And the only way they can thrive is by throwing a pity party every time you see them. This is not just you have to understand this person can also be under the control of a dark entity. They're being used in that. And you do have to understand some of these people, possession might be a heavy word, attachments might be better, or under the direct control of an actual vampire. Okay. Of some we're going to talk about coming up here in a little bit.
Well, we can actually tie this together with a narcissist. Narcissists, we cannot fix narcissism. Okay, this is going to sound so rude, but it's true. And don't take me literally on this, folks. A narcissist needs to die. We have to cross them over. Don't exactly.
Yeah, I don't need that. Tomorrow, Lauren, I do not need the headline.
No.
Woman shoots boyfriend after watching Reverend Rob and Laura Van Tyne. We don't need that.
Where I'm going with this is there's no fixing narcissism. All right. There's something within them that is inherently broken. Usually what happens in my experience, now these are just my experiences working with clients and people, when a person dies and they do not cross over, and the dark side now gains access to their soul, the dark side will reincarnate them. So we think all babies are heaven sent. Not so much. So what needs to happen is, even though people are being reincarnated from the lower astral, it's not like a perpetual death sentence for them, but they just have to work harder to get to the other side. And so a narcissist, why are there so many narcissists nowadays? You know what? My theory is because the light side has let so many humans go unchecked when it comes to death and crossing over. All right. That's just my theory. And then we've got also the concept of, bad people should rot in hell. Well, if bad people should rot in hell, they're not going back to God's source energy. So the lower astral energies, the fourth dimension, the hells, is where ghosts reside and the dark entities reside. Can we see the problem, light side guys? Come on.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure every soul crosses over, no matter how narcissistic, how evil, how corrupt, because once they're in the hands of God's source energy, they're off that fourth dimensional plane, which impacts the earth.
And one of the things too about that is to understand. Now I'm going to do what I do, blend a little bit of psychology with some of what we're talking about, because I believe they do meet, and dark forces use us.
Oh, absolutely.
And Jill, one of the things I think is the reason so many people feel a lack of control within their own life. So the only way they can feel that control is to gaslight and truly get people where they feel like they can push a button and it regains their power. So again, we're talking about that same dark energy as just the little, the Eeyore person, okay? But on a much different level. This is a slyer, deeper thinking. They know exactly what they're doing, but they are so out of control in their lives and feel so unimportant. That begins to breed this miscontempt, and the only way I can be in control is to control somebody.
Spot on. Absolutely. And so what is puppeting these people on a spiritual level, right?
Right.
And I think this is where we get into it. So when it comes to human vampires, okay, first of all, dealing with the dead is way easier than dealing with the living, okay? It just is. Humans. So how do we disconnect from an energy vampire, a living one, a person? Okay. So we all have meetings, we all have bosses, we all have families, we all have family reunions, right? Family reunions are family reunions, funerals, weddings, right? That's where the show happens. So one of the things we can do, and I don't know if I've discussed all of this here before or not, And these are spiritual practices. We practice them, okay? We have to practice to become stronger, to grow our spiritual muscle. All right. If I'm one and done with a spiritual practice, it's not going to stick and it's not going to reside within me. So we got to practice this. And you take 1 minute in the morning or 1 minute before you go to bed. Visualize yourself literally pouring down pink rose petals that come cascading down. Okay. They're wafting down like a room full of pink rose petals. What this does is it cuts the heavy energy in a room. It's a visualization technique. The more you practice it, the stronger it becomes. Our minds are our most powerful asset. And what we're doing, the tension in the room was so thick we could cut it with a knife. We've all heard that expression. So when I'm bringing down these pink rose petals coming down, the rose petals are cutting the energy, and the color of pink is a soft energy. So we're cleaning and clearing on a very slow level, but it is very effective. So if you're going to go into a meeting that's very contentious, you're going to, before you get there into that room, you're going to start with the pink rose petals. Fill that room with angels from the higher realms. Give them the instructions to calm the energy down in the room, to guide your words and actions. I can't tell the angels to guide my narcissistic boss's words and actions because that's a violation of spiritual law, but I can mind myself. The other thing you can do is we've got chakra centers, right? Our solar plexus right here in the chest area is where we make our connections. This is where the Akka cords reside, Akashic records, okay, these connections. So if I'm going somewhere, what I can do is I can put some frankincense on my hands, and I can just kind of sit there with my hands like this. It looks so natural and normal, like I'm not a weirdo, right? And I'm blocking their energy.
Right.
So those are some things that we can do to help ourselves.
Correct. And it's imperative. Y'all might have heard me say this before, and I firmly believe it now. We're talking about why is this all so many of them? Why is the world so chaotic? Things are shifting. And if you notice, okay, we have more people, particularly more mature people, who literally kind of want to separate themselves from society because they don't want to be under that pressure. There's so much pressure with politics, with all the PC stuff, with what's right or wrong to wear. You shouldn't be wearing a Bigfoot carrying a taco. It's one of those things.
It might be my favorite shirt yet. Okay.
Yeah, I love this guy. I'm gonna stand up and show everybody my shirt. So it is Bigfoot,
right?
Carrying a huge freaking taco. Doesn't get any better than that. More to come. All right. But it's one of those things where and this is all right. Jill, I'm going to talk about this, mainly mystics.
Yep.
Empaths are magnets for these energy ciphering characters. It doesn't give an empath an excuse. If you're an empath, you need even more to build your spiritual self-defense.
Yeah.
All right. So you can put a shield up, recognize that energy, and be at defense against it. Is that making any sense? I'm not trying to be pushy or offensive, but it is imperative that a lot of times we stay more neutral on certain things. I'm not talking about forever, and I'm not talking about passive aggressive. Okay. But in that, we have to see where all of this is going with an overall power struggle.
Yeah. Here's the other thing about empaths, and I might offend some empaths. I don't mean to do it, but you're responsible for yourself. So if you are an energy sponge, you need to knock that crap off, right? Don't become a martyr.
Correct.
Because that does not serve you. If we're letting people suck our energy all the time. And it can be hard, by the way, because there's so much bombarding us all over the place. But if we're letting, let's say, a relative or somebody that keeps sucking our energy dry, draining us, we're allowing them to abuse us. I am now incurring negative karma against myself because I'm allowing it to happen.
Right.
And this is where disconnecting the Aka cords, we talk about cord cutting, right? Those Aka cords, disconnect them. It's a simple technique. You can just visualize yourself. I disconnect all of them and I hand them off to an archangel.
Right.
The first rule in spiritual, etheric, psychic, energetic realms, never litter the ether. All right. Do not just dump your crap and just let it go, because someone else is going to trudge right into it on a psychic level. And we're talking, it could be a ghost, it could be whatever. Don't litter the ether. So this is including the psychic soot that a lot of people have around them. Transmute it through a violet flame. Bring up a violet flame through below the ground on up. That transmutes energy. It's a spiritual practice. These things are free, by the way. They don't cost money. They take time to perfect. But don't become an empath martyr, because we see a lot of that going on.
Exactly. And here's the other thing I want people to know: when I'm dealing with families in a counseling type basis, when I see somebody that has become the victim of an energy vampire and they're leery to cut that relationship off, they know it's not healthy, they know it's not good. Next thing you know, I got husbands, I got wives, I got kids telling me they're taking it out on me.
Mm-hmm.
We do damage to the people we care about the most. And literally, we start feeding an energy vampire. And I think it's a good way. It's like once bitten, you become one. If you stay in it, that attachment will continue then over to you. And you will then inadvertently become your own energy vampire.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And you're draining your family and you're losing your power of healing, of light and things. And we're giving it away because we don't want to be mean. We're not supposed to be, we're all supposed to be rainbows and unicorns, boop, right out the butt, guess what? I hear people all the time, what do? Practice this. Repeat this after me. Everybody out there, repeat this after me. No.
It's that easy, right?
Right. Yeah. And you know what, sweetie, I love you. You got too much. And tell somebody when they start getting hit with it, then people will seek help. It's almost like an addiction to this whole negative, because people, a lot of times when somebody's depressed or they're down, they get hugs. Oh, we want to, how do I deal with this? So we hug them. So they're actually gaining physical rewards for being a pain in the ass.
Yeah. No, we all have these moments where we're low, we need the support and all that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about individual people. Absolutely. Great question, Erica. I just lost my mother and my aunt turned on me while grieving. Why? Death can bring out the worst in people.
Yeah. Can I start with this one? Do. One of the things to remember in grief we deal with is anger. All right. Now, we used to think we had all these, it was 5 steps, then it became 5 stages, then it became 7 stages, and now it's 7 phases. And what we've learned about grief is you're going to go through every one of them, okay? But there is no order. So there could be some absolute anger, A, at herself, B, at you, displaced anger, everything you've heard about and talked about. It could just be. The best thing you can do at this point is A, I know you're hurt. I'm hurt. Okay. This was your sister, but I will not tolerate being talked to this way. I love you. All right. So take whatever time you need. When you're ready to talk, let me know. Again, you don't, like Laura said, you don't have to cut somebody off at the knees, no matter how fun it can be sometimes. But now you're you're feeding into that,
Yeah.
that thing.
And, Erica, here's another question. And that is, and first of all, sorry for the loss of your mom. I know that can,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tough. I mean, when we lose a loved one, even when we lose a not so loved one, it's tough to learn how to live without them. But let's make sure that your mom crossed over, and all you need to do is just take a few moments in a quiet space, bring in your angels, ask for your angels to come. And I'm requesting a team of angels from the higher realms to come into my living room or wherever right now. When that happens, you don't have to see them, but just kind of sense or feel that they're there. And then you make the request that, Mom, I need you to come into this living room or this space with me right now. Ghosts travel by the speed of our thoughts, okay? This is why when somebody dies, people can see Mom in this house and in this state and over here and over there. They're not bound by time, space, and gravity. They travel at the speed of our thoughts. So you're going to bring your mom into that room with these angels, all right? You're going to give the angels the directions to cross your mom over. I'm asking that this group of angels take my beloved mom, or not so beloved mom, to the appropriate realm of the heavens right now. Now, while your mom and the angels are there, it's okay to sit with that energy. Feel the love. Feel that power. Okay. And when I mean power, I mean the power of love. And then when you're ready, cross her over. And you don't have to be super psychic to do this. Anybody can do this.
Correct.
And a ghost energy can leave us feeling exhausted and drained all the time. A ghost energy is a low frequency energy. A ghost is a former human. This body is being animated by my soul energy. When my soul leaves this body, the energy that animated this body has to go somewhere. It starts out as a ghost energy, the fourth dimension. Lo, behold, I shall walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I shall fear no evil. That's the fourth dimension. That's the hells. It's saying, get your ass out of there and go up. Okay. But we don't talk about this all the time. And so that's what you can do to help your mom. My book on Amazon, Soul Tribe, Navigating the Spiritual War, has a specific prayer for that. Okay. Don't have to buy it to do it, but if you feel like you need the guidance, it's like 10 or 15 bucks or whatever. So know that. And this is for everybody here. Okay. Joey Garcia mentioned, Cynthia, yes, ghosts do feed off of our energy because they are not connected to the light source right now. And we got to get them back there, because as soon as we can cross over all of these lost souls, we start to clean up the energy of the planet.
Right.
The vibration of the planet starts to raise, which is what we want. There are archangels and angels. Is there a difference, Joey? I'm going to say yes and no, in the sense that the angelic realms, by the way, guys, newsflash, when we die, there's still politics, okay?
Right.
Think about angels, archangels, the seraphim transport.
There's a hierarchy in heaven. And I do want to address something before we get too far away. I think it was Cynthia, and I want Erica to know this drain feeling, Cynthia, about being happy. I have to tell you, the only time I shed a tear, I was there with my dad when he passed away. The moment he passed, my whole family felt a relief, because it had turned so vile, so bad with the dementia and things like that. That is not unheard of. And then when you're when you're dealing with the energy of other people that are carrying anger or they don't understand, like my dad's church that thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, okay? And they had no clue what we had been dealing with as his family, because it was that two-faced thing. All right. I want you to understand that's perfectly natural. Okay. It is perfectly natural. What is not natural is to stay living in a I'm pissed, I'm glad you're gone state. Okay.
Right.
At some point for your own soul, you have to say, all right, you know what? This is over. All right. And now it's a choice. If they're not here, you have the choice whether to live in their shadow or not. Okay. So you can free yourself from this energy vampire. Okay.
Yep.
Who may have not left to stick around because they were narcissistic or anything else. But you can free yourself by saying, I don't have to deal with this anymore. I love you. Do what Laura said. Bring in your team of angels and send them on their way, and then learn to breathe. It's a big thing to learn to breathe.
I got a really interesting story that kind of sums it up. So I'm working with somebody who had been raped as a child by her brother over and over and over. Okay. It was one of those horrible stories. And in this, her brother had ended up committing suicide. And by the way, the whole family knew this was happening and nobody cared. Okay. Which is abhorrent. So her brother dies and she's so angry with the brother. And she won't let him cross over because she's so angry because of the way he violated her, which I totally understand. Okay. For years.
Mm-hmm.
And he had died by a gunshot. Okay. She starts getting massive migraines after her brother died. Why? Because she's feeling the energetic signature of her ghost brother who shot himself in the head. So once we crossed him over, her migraine stopped. She didn't want to cross him over because she was so angry with him, and I respect that, okay? But get him out of the picture, because if he gets reincarnated again, he's going to cause more damage in that next lifetime. Just cross him over. So
Ray has got a great question here. I suspect some kids have vampire energy attached to them based on strange, violent behavior. Do you know if it is possible? It's absolutely possible. Yeah. It's not always the answer, okay? But it is possible. That there is, what they're hanging out in, what are they doing? Where is, what's their home life like? What are these things that are going on? Are they under control of another? And now they're trying to break out, and they actually remember a child's brain doesn't even stop growing until they're 25 years old.
Right.
All right. So at the most terminal point in their life in those teen years, when they're just an emotional mess, okay, when you throw an energy vampire in their midst, you do have the potential for a large problem.
Yeah. And then let's make it more complicated, shall we?
Yeah.
There are dark entities that puppet the living.
Correct.
And what happens, and
we need to shift into some of that.
Yeah.
Because we're over halfway now.
Yeah. So let's kind of start talking about the deeper issue of this. And this is, I bring this up because knowledge is power. Okay. Putting our heads in the sand doesn't solve the problem. But once we know, period.
Right.
So, thank you, Catherine. And thank you also, Lori. Knowledge is power. So what happens is these dark energetic forces that are parasites, namely the reptilians, okay? These are the biggest offenders. And what they do is they puppet generations. Why are family patterns so hard to break? Okay. If it's any form of abuse, okay. Even if it's like a gambling addiction. Okay. It's because these reptilian energies are swarming the family lines. So what happens is that these kids don't, and adults too, don't know that they're being puppeted. A lot of times they will put implants and devices within people to control their behaviors. The amygdala is one of the more common places that I see these implants and devices the reptilians put into people. And I don't want to get into voice to skull technology because I think that's a little deep and heavy, but that's an aspect too. This is where we start hearing the voices in our head that aren't our voices. But the trick is we have to learn how to break free of this. The best way we can break free of this is to start bringing in our angels.
Correct.
I say that's the best way because 1, everybody has access to angels, and 2, our angels are here to help us. Angels cannot help us unless we ask. We need to make the request. Okay. Then we've also got, Lori's bringing up some other things too. We'll talk about that in a minute.
But I want to address Joey.
Yeah.
Joey, it's not that there is a tier, okay?
Yeah.
But archangels are spread across and they have different purposes. They employ and implore other angels to help represent them. When you look at Michael, okay, there are different aspects of humanity that Michael concerns himself with. There's another angel that you're not even mentioning here called Metatron, okay, that deals with healing and all of that. You'll see Metatron's cube, different things. Raphael, love, emotions, creation. Gabriel, physical realm, okay? So it would be like having a top tier angel for every aspect. So there's way more than 3. Okay.
It's 72, if I think.
Yeah, something like that at last count or whatnot. So it is one of those things. And the other thing is, I think it was somebody was asking, I think it was Rhea. She started, one more question, please. When babies, and then it hasn't come through. Yeah, here it is.
We'll get there.
Yeah, it was about why babies cry after their naps and how to help them. That gets into a whole other area or whatnot. So we'll go there. Yeah.
But that's a perfect answer, Reverend Rob, here about the angels and the angelic realms. They are here to serve humanity. One of my best angel lessons was about 15 years ago when I got schooled by a team of angels that showed up. And they were like, look, you got to understand. And this was 15 years ago. Think about where the world is now versus where it was 15 years ago. Okay. And they're like, humanity needs to understand that they have to start asking for our help. We can't just sit by idly anymore. We have to, because you guys have been programmed to believe that your problems aren't big enough. You've been programmed to believe all these false things about angels, when really we're here to help, but we can't until you ask. Okay. Rhea's question about babies, why do they cry after their naps and how to help them? Babies are really tuned into these other realms because they're so fresh on the earth plane. So one of the things that parents can do is you can make the request that angels surround your child in your child's room at night during nap time, etc. Surround them with the angelics, because the more parents can surround their children with angelics from the higher realms, it makes their God connection easier throughout life.
Right.
All right.
The other thing is you have to be aware of, Rhea. Babies, it's the only way they have, if we're talking to infants, to communicate. I'm done laying on my back. I'm done laying here. I want up. I need stimulation. All right. Now, it doesn't hurt a child to cry. It hurts a child to cry to the point where it feels abandoned. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with walking in, letting the child cry, but hearing your voice, rubbing its chest, its tummy, it's here, mommy's here, grandma's here, whoever. That's where they're building trust and learning security, and then pick them up, okay? But everything that happens with a child, we have to remember, it's their only form of communication, right?
And distinguish the cries. Is this cry a terror cry? Are they shaking? Okay, if they're shaking or there's something else is going on. Night terrors, your doctors will say, oh, night terrors are just, normal. No, they're not. It's not normal.
They're not. No, they're not. And let's do this. A lot of people don't understand the difference between a nightmare and night terrors. And there is a decided, marked difference. The nightmare, you might wake up crying. Night terrors are when you shoot up. The kid is screaming when it's like somebody just hurt them.
Blood curling. blood
it is blood curling. It is terror. Use the word terror. Waking up in a dream and crying or whatnot is one thing. That's nightmares. But a night terror is something different, and it needs to be paid close attention to.
Night terrors will happen over and over and over. A nightmare maybe once every now and then, right? So if your child is experiencing night terrors, bring in your angelic realms. You can use an oil diffuser because that's a high frequency substance that goes into the room to help protect. The other thing is the frequency of green at night can help create a protective barrier. Everything is energy and frequency. So you can try a green night light at night. And by the way, if you're an adult experiencing night terrors or sleep paralysis, the same thing. Correct. There's some dark entity literally harming your child on a spiritual level. So don't let the doctors tell you it's normal. They'll outgrow it. You don't need 2 years of them screaming in terror or whatever it is. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Joey's saying here, is it possible for one of us in this society today to become an archangel? At this point right now, no, it is not.
No.
Now, but we don't know where the future holds down the road or whatnot. Sorry, this is very interesting and fascinating, and it should be. Also, you would want to call your angels during an addiction or in trouble. First thing you want to do if you're in an addiction, okay, or in trouble, is you want to call upon spirit itself, God itself. Bring that out. And then tell God, I want the angels here to protect me. You must remember, if we're going to go off of Christian theology, and I'm not saying that's the way to go, okay? The minute you start deifying an angel, okay, you're going against scripture. That's all right. And that's just, it's that plain and simple.
It's the hierarchy, right?
Right. It's the hierarchy, but you have God, Father, and I include something that a lot of your Christian religions don't, God the Mother, that divine feminine energy that it's talked about in Genesis chapter 1. Read it if you don't believe me. It's one of those things that everybody wants to ignore, okay? But this is where we go to the source. You have the source of spirit directly. You want to make sure that you're calling on that, and then remember that spirit has given us his angels, her angels, for protection.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to family curses, voodoo, black magic, somebody's mentioning that earlier here. That may very well need the help of a trusted spiritual practitioner. Okay.
Right.
And this is important to understand that living people, voodoo is very real. Santeria is very real. All of these forms of black magic are very real. Hypnotism can be a form of black magic too, by the way. It's about the intention. So what we have to do is know that if there's a family curse or something, what can we do to break it? And it's usually a family curse is bound by, usually it's false contracts, contracts of omission, contracts of missing data of the dark side. All right. Most people most souls don't knowingly go into a contract with the dark entity unless it's under some form of duress or misinformation. That's just the way it is. And actually, I did a very fascinating past life.
You can fall susceptible.
Yes.
But you don't partner with them without a knowing partnering.
Right. And so I did a fascinating past life regression just yesterday. And my client she's got some blockages in this life and she's trying to figure out what they are. She had signed multiple contracts with a nefarious alien agenda species, and it was to save certain people on her home planet. So she signed these contracts, but they were missing data. It was under duress. It was all of these false pretenses. Once that is known, they can literally be burned through a series of light energies. Also, you want to make sure you have somebody that can handle the proper removal of the reptilians, of the sitars, or whatever they are, and send them back to God's source creation. Just removing the contracts doesn't do anything because they're still puppeting us and going around us. We have to remove them permanently. Now, just because I remove a group of reptilians permanently from Joe over here doesn't mean more can't come in if Joe doesn't clean up his act. Okay.
Right.
And this is where addictions become a spiritual issue. An addiction means that there is something puppeting you. Drink more, take more, take more. Where's the voices coming from, right? You remove those voices, those entities, you've got moments of clarity. You still have the physical chemical makeups that you have to overcome, but you have to make sure that you are strong enough to not allow more in. That's
Correct.
the key.
Correct. And Natalie's posing a question, and I know we've prayed, Natalie, and things like this. So the key thing is, I would ask you, and I'm not trying to be an ass. I'm really not. Okay.
But this is also a good topic for everybody.
Yeah. What is the definition of insanity? What are you doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? What are you trying to do differently? You've prayed or whatnot, but what are you doing? You may need higher help than what you're capable of giving at this point. Okay. Whether it be spiritual counseling or mental counseling or a combination of both. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I constantly recommend a combination of both. All right.
Absolutely.
And this is going to be that thing because you may have gotten so entwined, and we've seen it happen. Laura and I have seen this happen with people. You can no longer cut yourself free because you've begun to lose faith. You've prayed. You don't think anything's happened or whatnot. This is one of the reasons what I want people to do is go into my link tree, okay, and look at Laura's spiritual self-defense classes, because you have to understand, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago or months ago, about understanding what you actually believe and do you actually believe it? Because if you don't have that strength of true belief in whatever system of hierarchy and spirituality it is you believe in, okay, you got problems, okay? So it's one of those things. So one of the first things I would say, could there be, it sounds to me like, we definitely have some type of and what I'm picturing here is a very clingy, stringy attachment, very dark, sticky, and it's like you shake something off, but you can't get rid of it. And you actually may need to seek a spiritual exorcism and a lot of times people do need mental health counseling after a possession or an attachment.
These things are traumatizing.
What's that?
They're traumatizing. Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you're talking about that stringy stuff. I see a lot of black goo in my world that I exist in.
Yeah.
And you flick it off and it just doesn't come off. You flick it and then it comes back out. It's like a boomerang effect also.
Yeah.
So, yep. And I think this is good information for everybody, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And that's the hardest part.
Right.
The light side is here to assist us, but we got to ask for help. And we have to have that inner strength within us. And when we get beaten over and over and over, it's so hard to move an inch, right? But we have to take and summon all of that courage within us to make a change. And that change can be just 1 degree of change, but that 1 degree keeps echoing out. That 1 degree becomes 10 degrees and farther out it goes. Right. And then pretty soon you free yourself. And
so, yeah. And this is very important to me, what Joey's talking about here. Joey, this is not a curse, okay? This is, they both made free choices. You get to make that choice, but this is something I have constantly referred to, Laura's talked about it, is a karmic debt by your family. And so it is going to be up to you to turn that around, say no and to teach your children, okay, to say no. So you can break that karmic bond and it will stop happening.
When we can break those negative family patterns, and it could be a curse in the sense that way down the road, something happened, but doesn't mean we have to live with it.
Correct.
The hardest thing we can do is break negative family patterns, just like Joey's doing. So he's talking about his granddad, his father, everybody cheats and this and that. And Joey's like, yep, nope, not me. You're strong within yourself. You were probably sent into this family to make the change, to show people you don't have to do this, right?
Yes. And this is the true karmic debt. When we continue on, there were things I had to write with my families on my dad's side, karmic debts that had to do with a lot of we're all true Southerners, a lot of true racialism. There are true skeletons in my deep family's closet. Okay. And I had to write that way of thinking. Okay. And we had to move forward because I was deeply entrenched in it, even as my dad was a preacher, with these hidden conversations at home and things like that. This is karmic debt, and you can break the chain, but you have to say, I'm breaking the chain. I will not follow this. I will not allow my children to follow this, and applaud them when they come up and they're taking a different viewpoint on this topic. Okay. And it's one of those things, so this is very important. Jill says it stops with you. It stops with you if you want it to.
Yeah. And that's hard because we only know what we've been taught growing up, right?
Correct.
So this is our frame of reference as a small child. This is just what people do. You've got a parent who's a pathological liar. Well, the child grows up thinking, well, doesn't everybody lie? Right. So the same thing. So I love that, Joey. Great conversation. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
And saying these things out loud gives our voice power too, by the way, just like Cynthia said. Absolutely.
Right. And we didn't even get as deep into like black magic, demonic forces, things like that. A lot of times, and I want us to be careful because I think we downplay dark entities or whatnot by giving them a name, reptilians. It sounds so alien, or things like this. We do have to remember. Yeah, I know. But I think people get so used to hearing certain things, and the word demon or worker of the dark, things like that, might make it a little more, okay, I really need to be careful here. Okay.
Yeah. So the reptilians actually showed up at the Garden of Eden as a snake.
Correct.
The reptilians show up in our artwork, throughout the golden age, those little scaly dudes with the horns, right? Those are reptilians. These are the original purveyors of evil, but they have many faces and shapes. We also have the shadow men. We have the man with the hat. We've got the standard typical black magician, which is kind of like this bony dude with scraggly hair. So there's many forms of them, and there's also a political hierarchy in between all of these species. It's no different than planet Earth. We've got the felines, we've got the canines, we got the humans, we've got birds, all those things. Same thing happens in these other dimensions. We've got all kinds of species. It's who's who in that spiritual zoo. Phrase is not original with me. I think we've all heard that, but that's what that means. And so I have, throughout my experiences, made it a point to figure out who and what they are, what they do, how to categorize them, because it's almost, I taught science. Actually, the only science I ever got to teach really with my degrees was sex ed once a week, a year. Sucked. But I was mostly a math and Spanish teacher. And so, creating the logic trail for what these things are, because people always ask me, oh my God, isn't that scary? Aren't you scared? It's like, I'm kind of desensitized to it right now because I've been doing it for so long and I know their playbook. I know how they operate. I know that the the typical black magician, those bony skeleton-y dudes that are in the lower astral that are wreaking havoc on us, which were former ghosts usually, and they've just so degraded that they are no longer a ghost energy, they're a dark entity.
Right.
Will utilize the energies of lower realm entities. And these lower realm entities are they're the pawns on the chessboard. They're these long wispy things, and what they do, you see them out of the corner of your eye. You can feel like something brush up against your leg, and you're like, what was that? Nothing's there. What their job is to do is to extract our energies, and they have to give the energy they extracted from us to the black magician that I was just talking to. If they don't comply, then they get abused, they get harmed.
Right.
So the best thing we can do is cross them over, those lower realm entities. Also, the black shadows can be many different things. They can be spider beings. They can be like those Harry Potter Dementor things. They can be many different things.
I have dealt with a couple of black shadow beings, and they do appear just that. And when they flee, when you're rebuking them, when you're bringing in your angels, when you say that is enough, you will actually feel or see a shadow recede into a room or a corner or whatnot.
And
so
bring your angels in to remove it so it doesn't become someone else's problem.
Because those, to me, now we're getting into demon, dark energy, evil things that are trying. They're not of the heavenly realm. They're cast down.
Not anymore. They left the light of God, and they need us as a food source. That's the problem. Now, along the way, we sort of missed the memo, and I kind of fought the light side. I'll probably get a tongue lashing tonight. I go to bed from the light side. They're like, hey, let's see what happens. Let's, Lucifer and all of his buds left the light of God. What's going to happen? Let's watch. And they're just sitting back eating popcorn for a few millennia.
And you have to remember, if you read the Christian Bible, and I keep saying that because there's different versions, okay? But this is what most Americans have been exposed to, okay? The reason for the flood, if you believe in the flood or whatnot, okay, was that the sons of man, angels, other forces were on the earth, started to know women and saw them as good. Bible, don't kill the messenger, okay? And actually started to pollute the human race. And that's when everything went haywire, and God said, that's enough. Again, according to Christian Bible, okay?
I have a little bit.
There's only one guy here worthy of anything or whatnot.
I don't disagree with you, but based on my experiences, it's similar, right?
Yeah.
There was a pollution.
Every culture has a flood story. So I'm just,
For me, the tree of life was contaminated. And that's kind of what caused it. And Donna chose to stop the verbal and physical abuse of her family because she chose not to expose her kids to it. That takes such courage, Donna. Seriously. That is not an easy thing to do. And it's not easy, and it's hard when you have the kids that don't understand, but my hat's off to you, because that's one of the biggest lessons we could do. And absolutely. I loved Alyssa's comment that just popped up there for a moment ago. Go for it, girlfriend. Enjoy it, right?
Right.
And there are many people out there who don't have these experiences, right? And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And yet, remember, one of the things Jesus was here to teach us was its intentions. Yeah. We've talked about this before. People are taught, if you use tarot, it's all dark. It's all no. Y'all hear me? I pray all the time to God the Father and God the Mother. Okay, it's your intentions. All right, but when you start to give these cards power, and you're praying to the card. Let me see what the cards say. And sometimes you will hear me say, let me see what the cards say. Well, let me see what Spirit's saying through that. You will hear me correct myself that way. That becomes a slippery slope, okay, of opening some doors you don't want to open. So that anybody that's had a session with me will tell you first thing I do is ask them, can we start the session with a prayer? Okay. Because that's the important thing, is to remember where the power, where the light is, who's going to protect you, and what, you know?
And that prayer immediately, the more we pray, the bigger the connection to God's source energy we have.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Yep. Absolutely. Wow, man, that was a fast hour.
Wasn't it? Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got anything else? I don't want to get off on another tangent, but we need to go deeper. And, you know,
Let's do it.
I think some people would like to hear some of the exorcism stories you and I both can talk about, and why and what. I think they would like to hear more about. There are vampires that, you know, feed on your health, feed on your energy, feed on your finances,
On your wealth. Yeah.
and you know, there are things like this. I think that we need to do some more of that, and I think people want that. So
Let's do it. I am all for that. I'll be out of town next week, but I'll be zooming in from another location, so it'll be good.
okay. Yeah, so we can do we'll have you hold your camera up to the window, live on the streets of wherever you're from.
You know what? I'm going to be in Sedona on Wednesday night.
Ooh, okay.
I'll be in Sedona. So
you and I need to do Sedona together, get a portal, and do a show from there. That would be
we got to get our act together. We've both been so busy. So let's work on that. Absolutely. So, and then I'll be in other parts of Arizona throughout the week. So super excited about that. I hear it's in the 90s. Not going to complain. Yeah. And I've got Journey to Truth coming up in May of this year. And if you go to Rebels of Disclosure, check out my social media. I've got some stuff on that if you're interested in going. Last I knew, they were 80% sold out, and that was like a week or two ago. So check them out. It is going to be a good time.
And I'm having meetings tomorrow about being in person in more locations in the New England area. Okay. And Laura and I are going to talk to these people about maybe getting over to into different states or whatnot, and doing some in-person shows together.
That will be fun.
Yes. So, well, with all that being said, you know, everybody, what Laura and I really want, take what you want, leave what you don't. It's okay. All right. We don't get mad, but just leave having found and experienced some peace, love, and light. Wow.
Thank you.
Bangarang.